So you don't have a social media strategy. Don't worry, by the end of this video, you will have one. Not only that, but you will also have a copy of your social media strategy for you to refer back to. And you'll have this because I have created a free strategy template, which you can use to work through your strategy and to refer to it later. So head to the link in the description if you want to get your hands on the free strategy template. Let's get going. Let's dive into the first step, which is all about your goals and objectives. This part, in my opinion, is like the driest part of the strategic process, but it's also the most important. So I hate that this is what we have to kick off with, but we do have to get it out of the way because your strategy will not work if you do not set your goals and objectives correctly. So for the purpose of this video, I'm gonna treat your goals and your objectives as two different things. So your goals are going to be these overarching things that you want to achieve. I like to think of them as like your North Star, you know, it's like your guiding light. It's the reason why you're doing all the things that you're doing. It's the reason why you've got a camera in your face for half the week. It's the reason why you're editing your content for the other half of the week, right? It's because you're trying to reach your overarching goal. Maybe it's that you want to quit your job. Maybe you want to become a content creator, earn enough money to quit your job. Maybe you want to earn money to support your family. Maybe you want to build a community of like-minded individuals. Whatever that big goal is, I want you to write it down and keep hold of it, okay? Because what we then want to do is we want to create our objectives. Our objectives are different because our objectives are more like business marketing version of our goals. So we've got these beautiful, shiny North Star goals, which are so great and they make us so excited and they give us the will to live. And then we've got our like less sexy objectives. So these objectives should very much come down from our goals. So if your goal was that you wanted to build a community of like-minded individuals, then your goal might be focusing on engagement. You want to get a really good level of engagement and interactions from your community online. On the other hand, if your goal was that you wanted to work with these big brands and earn money that way, then maybe your goal is that you want to grow your audience because maybe that's the thing that's stopping you from doing that at the moment. Or maybe your goal is that you want to make sales. Maybe you're using social media to grow your business. Well, if that's the case, then your goal is going to be around how many leads you can get from social media, how many website visits you're going to get from social media, so on and so forth. So your objectives are basically a more specific version of your goals. What I want you to do is focus on one objective at a time. Some people have multiple objectives, and honestly, that's quite an advanced way of having a social media strategy. If it's just you running your social media channels, then I recommend on focusing on just one objective at a time. Let's not make life unnecessarily difficult for ourselves. Now, there are a couple of things that you need to attach to that objective just to make sure that it's going to help you reach your goal. So the first thing is you need to understand how you're going to measure whether or not you've met that objective. So this is going to require you to pick a metric, which is basically a unit of measurement. If your objective was to do with engagement, then you probably want to look at likes and comments and shares. If your objective was to do with growth, then you're probably looking at a metric along the lines of reach or views or video plays. If your objective was to do with sales, then your metric might be website visits or the amount of money that you make. It's important that you figure out the way in which you're going to measure the effectiveness of your objective, because if you don't, you might end up using the wrong measurement for your objective. A really good example of this is when people say to me, hey, Jade, my objective for the past 3 months has been to increase my engagement, but I've just noticed that my reach has dropped. So obviously it's not working. And then I'll be like, no, it's a different metric. That's not what we're looking at. Has your engagement increased? And they'll be like, yeah. And I'll be like, well, then it's working, you know? So you want to attach a metric to it. And then you want to get really specific with what you want to achieve within the next 3 months. I want you to write down a number that you can measure to identify whether or not you've reached that goal.
You feel me?
So if you're trying to grow, then I want you to write down how many followers or subscribers you want within the next 3 months' time. If you're trying to get more engagement, then what is your engagement rate going to be in 3 months' time? Or what is your monthly engagement number going to be? How many interactions are you going to get on your posts in 3 months' time? Write that all down, spend some time on it, rewatch this section if you're not clear, because it can take a little while to get used to this, especially if you're new to the world of marketing. But this is an imperative step to defining your strategy. So once you've done that, we can move on to more exciting things. Okay, so the next step is, of course, to do with your audience. Now that you know what you're trying to achieve and when you want to achieve it by, we now need to figure out who your audience are, because they're the ones who are going to help you achieve it. If you've not done this piece of work at all, or maybe you haven't refreshed this piece of work in a while, I'm going to need you to do this right now, because it's the most important part of your social media channel. If you're someone who thinks, maybe I don't need to do this step, I'm here to tell you that the only scenario in which you don't need to do this step is if you are someone who uses social media for personal fun. If you have a personal account and you're just sharing whatever you share just to bond with your family and connect, which is how most people use social media, then you don't need to do this step. Of course not. If you are using social media to build a business, whether it's a personal brand or a separate brand to yourself, you do need to do this step. Once you decide that you're using your social media for some form of gain, you now need to make the switch from creating content because you love it to creating content because your audience love it. And that is just the truth. The good news is this section isn't too tiresome, okay? So what you basically want to do is you want to get up a document or the free template that I've given you. And I want you to start writing down a few answers to these questions. So I want you to imagine the people who are watching your content, right? Put yourself in their shoes. Who are you trying to target with your content? A lot of people try to target people very similar to themselves, and that's great. You can do that. That works, but you still have to do this step. So you want to write down answers to these questions, but specifically answers that are relevant to your content. So you want to answer the question, what are the demographics of your audience? This is like their age, their life stage, their location, that kind of stuff. You then want to dig a bit deeper into their psychographics. So what do they like? What do they dislike, etc. And you also want to figure out what their pain points are. So these are things that bother them, things that they relate to, things that they find frustrating. And you want to write down as much as you can under each of those subheadings because it's going to give you a good idea of who your audience are. When you understand who your audience are, it becomes a lot easier for you to create content for them. And if you are not creating content for a specific audience, then you are creating content for no one, okay? Okay, let's move on. Right, so this next step is to do with good old content pillars. Some creators don't actually use content pillars. I know, shocking. And they're still fine and they're still growing. You can get away with not having content pillars if you understand your audience on such a deep level that you don't need to have these buckets of content that you only ever talk about in order to bond with them. You can just talk about what you know they're going to respond to. If you are not in that category yet, if you're fresh to this and you're like, oh, I actually need some pillars, then don't worry because they're very easy to create. Content pillars are basically like buckets or themes of content that you stick to when you post. So you normally want to have between 3 to 5 different pillars, and the pillars need to relate to your audience. That's why we do all these steps in this order. You already know who your audience are, you know what their pain points are, you know the type of content they like on social media. So now you just need to categorize that into 3 to 5 different pillars. So let's say you know that your audience are millennial entrepreneurs. I'm just going to pick something that I somewhat relate to, right? Then your content pillars might be something like mindset management, money, time management, ideation, hiring a team, tools and processes, that kind of thing, because you know that that's what your audience are interested in, right? A bonus tip here though, and this is something that's very new in my opinion to 2024. I don't think I've given this tip before. Think about having a bonus pillar. And what this bonus pillar should be is just a content pillar about you. So all these pillars should be balanced. So if you've got 5 pillars, then like this pillar will make up 20% of your content roughly. And this will just be when you're sharing life updates, whether they're wins or losses, whether you got married recently or it was your birthday. I'll put some examples on the screen of when I've used this pillar on my content. Honestly, it's often some of my best performing content. Whilst people are coming to my channel to learn, right? And that's the content that they really want from me. So it's not like they suddenly want me to only start posting my personal life. Every now and then disrupting that feed with a personal update so people can get to know me on a deeper level and understand what's going on behind the scenes and actually see me as a person and not just like an information machine has really helped my engagement and really helped my connection with my audience. And I think it will do the same for you. So consider adding in that bonus pillar. All right, let's talk about the next step, which is all about making your content valuable. This is potentially the most important step, guys, okay? We already understand what your objectives are. We know who your audience are. We even know what your content pillars are. So you might be thinking, I'm done. You might be reaching for that X button on the screen to be like, Jade, honey, there's nothing you need to tell me. There is. There's still more I need to tell you. What we need to talk about is valuable content and how we take your content pillars and actually merge it with value to make sure that your content actually performs well. When I'm talking about value, I'm basically talking about something that I call the value exchange.
Here we go again.
It's funny because every time I talk about a value exchange, I imagine that there's a handful of people watching this rolling their eyes. People who've watched me for a while, they're like, here she goes again. Look, I love this concept. I don't even think I heard it anywhere. I don't think I made it up, but look, I claim it like it's my own. I live my life by this core principle. The idea of a value exchange is that there is always being value being exchanged between two parties. Right now, the value that I'm getting from you is your attention. I'm also going to earn some money from this video. Let's be real here. I'm going to earn some money from this video as well, which is valuable to me. The value that you're getting from me is I'm teaching you something. You're getting educational value. There is an exchange of value happening, and that is why this video is hopefully getting a good amount of views, right? Purely because the value exchange is balanced. Now, it's a similar concept when it comes to all of your social media content. In order for it to perform well, you need to give something of value to your audience so they give you something of value back, whether it's their attention or a like. Seems like a really good time to just ask you guys to like this video if you're finding this useful. A like or a comment, or maybe they share your video with someone, right? Maybe they subscribe to you or follow you after they've just seen your content. This is all value that they're giving to you, the creator. They're not going to give you that value if you haven't given them something of value first. That is just how life, but also social media works. So how do you provide value to your audience? Well, there are 4 very common value points that you might want to consider using. The first is educational value. It's the obvious value that a lot of people think is the only way to provide value. That's not true. But educational value is the one that I share. I'm often teaching things in my content. The other type is entertaining value. This is when you watch a creator's content and it's funny, or it makes you cry or laugh, or it makes you scared. You know, it's entertained you in some way, shape, or form. Third one is relatable value. This is often overlooked, but it's one of my favorites. It's when a creator produces a piece of content that their audience sees and they relate to. So you look at it and they're like, oh my God, yeah, this person gets me. This person gets me. That's strong. It's a strong, strong form of value to offer. And the fourth, I always forget one. The fourth is inspirational value. So this is when a creator produces something that inspires their audience. It motivates them. It's aspirational in some way, right? That's another value point that I like to dabble in from time to time. But those are the 4 most common value points. So look at those, pick one, just pick one. Which one works for you? You don't always have to focus on one value point. In your next post, you might want to switch over to entertaining value. Maybe you want to try and do 2 at one time, whatever. Just create content with at least one of those value points in mind. And I promise you, it will result in your content performing better. All right, so next up, you need to choose your social media platform. Now, most common social media platforms that people choose to tackle are YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X or /Twitter or Pinterest, right? Now, as with your objectives, I'm going to want you to focus. So what I recommend that you do is you write down all of the channels you want to be on, and then I want you to rearrange the order of that list, and I want you to order it in terms of importance. So the channel at the top of that list is the most important social media channel to you. It's important that you do this because there will come a time where you'll be pushed for time, or you might have to reduce your posting frequency, whatever. You want to make sure that one channel is always immune to that. You want to make sure that if times get difficult, you're still remaining consistent on at least one of those channels, and you want it to be your most important channel. Now, another top tip for this, a bit more advanced, is to pick a channel which lends itself to repurposing as your most important channel. So that's what I do. And let me just explain to you what I mean. My most important channel is YouTube, obviously, my favorite. And that means that I can create these long videos, and I can cut these videos down into shorts, into TikToks, into reels. I can also take all of the prep work that I've done for this video, and I can use it for inspo to create fresh new content for the other channels too. I might even use it for inspo to create a newsletter as well. Because I've picked a channel that lends itself to long form content as my main channel, it's allowed me to trickle that down and use that content to repurpose across all my other channels as well. So a bit more advanced, but really, really useful. I also actually have a podcast episode where I dive into which channel you should be focusing on for 2024. So if you want some help in that area, then I really recommend you listen to it. I will put a link below. All right, guys, we're almost there. This step is quite small, but it's to do with your posting frequency. So I want you to now get really clear on how much content you are going to be posting on your social media channels every single week. Now, I'm going to give you some rough averages of how often people post. It doesn't mean that you have to do this, but it's just worth saying, right? On YouTube, when it comes to long form videos, people often post between 1 to 3 a week. When it comes to shorts, people often post shorts daily. On TikTok, people post daily. Sometimes people post up to 5 TikToks a day, which is wild. On Instagram, people post onto their feed, whether it's a photo or a carousel or a reel, on a daily basis as well. What's important though, is that you figure out a posting frequency which works for you, because if it doesn't work for you, then you're not going to be consistent, and also which works for your audience. I always talk about the fact that some niches shouldn't post every day. Like, I personally don't think that you guys want to hear me bang on about Instagram and social media and entrepreneurship on a Sunday morning. Like, I don't think you guys want that. Therefore, I don't post on my Instagram or on my TikTok over the weekend, right? So figure out if your audience might be more inclined to hear from you on certain days of the week than others, and merge that with what you know about the average posting frequencies and your schedule to pick a frequency which works for you. All right, so next Next up, we need to experiment and we need to evaluate. You now have everything you need to start posting valuable content for your audience. What you need to do is to go ahead and just start doing that. Start experimenting and start sharing content regularly. Every month, you want to set time aside to go through your analytics and see what's going on. Remember the metric that we defined at the start of the video? That's the one you want to be looking out for because that's the one that's relevant to your own objectives and your own goals. Okay, guys, that is it for today's video. If you feel like hanging around though, I do recommend watching this one. It's all about how you can ensure that you're reaching the right audience through your content. So very, very important. Thank you so much for watching as always. Don't forget to grab your free strategy template in the link below, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.